Standing in the shadow of a crystal chandelier, I watched as my son's bride tapped her champagne glass, silencing the wedding reception. I should have been celebrating Brian's happiest day. Instead, I was about to become the center of a storm that would tear apart a wedding, expose an elaborate fraud, and eventually have the FBI knocking on doors. "I'd like to thank everyone for coming," Ashley said, her voice carrying across the ballroom, "especially those who traveled so far." She gestured toward her family, mother, father, 2 aunts, uncle, cousin, all beaming with pride from the front table. Then her eyes found me at table 15, tucked away near the kitchen entrance. "And thank you to Brian's father, Ryan, for showing up." Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. "We weren't sure if he would clean up well enough for our venue's standards." The room fell silent. Brian shifted uncomfortably beside her. "But I suppose we should expect that from someone who spent years in the gutter before getting lucky with his little rehab business." In that moment, 14 years of sobriety, 8 successful recovery centers, and a $22 million business empire seemed to vanish. I was reduced to my past mistakes by a woman who'd never bothered to know me. What she didn't realize was that I was sitting at exactly the right table, table 15, to unleash the truth I'd discovered about her wealthy California family. A truth contained in a manila envelope beside my untouched wedding cake. The choice was simple: stay silent and let my son marry a woman built on lies, or stand up and expose a fraud so elaborate that within hours wedding guests would be giving statements to authorities. I chose the truth, and it changed everything. Before I tell you how I uncovered Ashley's scheme and exactly what happened when I stood up from table 15, take a moment to hit that subscribe button. My story about exposing my son's bride and her fake family is just one of many true accounts of justice and redemption you'll find on this channel. Have you ever caught someone in a massive lie? Someone who constructed an entire false identity? Drop your experience in the comments below. I read every comment, and your stories help others recognize warning signs in their own relationships. What you're about to hear isn't just about a wedding day confrontation. It's about standing up for yourself when others try to make you feel small. It's about protecting those you love from people who hide behind masks. And trust me, when I reveal exactly how Ashley's rich family fell apart right there at the reception, and why federal agents became involved, you'll understand why this story changed how I view both deception and forgiveness forever. Let's get back to where it all began, 8 months before that wedding day, when I first met the woman who would nearly destroy my relationship with my son. Recovery taught me that true strength isn't found in never falling. It's in how you rise after each fall. 14 years ago, I was at rock bottom, divorced, estranged from my 10-year-old son Brian, and losing my battle with addiction. The night I checked into New Beginnings Recovery Center changed everything. "You're not the sum of your mistakes," my counselor told me that first week. "You're the sum of your recoveries." I took those words to heart. After completing the program, I worked as a peer counselor, then program director. When the owner decided to sell, I mortgaged everything to buy the center. That single facility grew into 8 locations across the state, helping thousands reclaim their lives. But my greatest recovery was rebuilding my relationship with Brian. It took years of consistent presence, showing up when I said I would, proving I'd changed. When Brian himself struggled with addiction in college, I was there, not with judgment, but with understanding. We fought that battle together, and he'd been clean for 6 years now. He'd graduated with an engineering degree, landed a great job, and finally seemed happy. Then came Ashley Jenkins. It was a Thursday evening when I arrived at Brian's apartment, flowers in hand. He'd been dating Ashley for 3 months, but kept postponing introductions. Finally, he'd invited me to dinner. I knocked on the door, straightening my shirt. Brian opened it, smiling nervously. "Dad, come in," he said, hugging me quickly. Ashley stood in the living room, tall and elegant, in an expensive-looking outfit. Her smile froze when she saw me. "Brian didn't mention you were coming," she said, her hand pulling away from my offered handshake. "Dad, this is Ashley," Brian said, visibly uncomfortable. "Ashley, this is my father." Ashley's smile never reached her eyes. "Oh, the one with the history." The word hung in the air like a warning. I had built a recovery empire worth millions, helping thousands break free from addiction. But in Ashley's eyes, I was just damaged goods. "Nice to meet you too," I said, placing the flowers on the counter when she didn't take them. Her gaze traveled over my outfit. Clean jeans, button-down shirt, practical shoes. Nothing fancy, but respectable. Her expression suggested otherwise. "Brian mentioned you work with addicts?" Her tone made it sound like I collected garbage. "I run recovery centers," I corrected. 8 facilities across the state. Ashley nodded dismissively. "That's important work." The dinner that followed was a masterclass in subtle condescension. Ashley steered every conversation away from my business achievements, repeatedly mentioned her family's old money in California, and somehow managed to make each question about my past feel like an accusation. "Your centers must be interesting places to work," she commented over dessert. "They're places of transformation," I replied. "People walk in broken and walk out rebuilt." "How quaint," she said, checking her watch. When I left that night, I hugged Brian in the hallway. "She seems interesting," I offered. "She comes from a different world, Dad," Brian said defensively. "Her family has expectations." "And what about your expectations?" I asked. "Do they include someone who respects your father?" Brian's face hardened. "Ashley respects success. You of all people should understand having to prove yourself." Those words stayed with me during the drive home. I'd spent 14 years proving myself, to judges, to banks, to clients, to Brian. Now I had to prove myself worthy of my son's girlfriend. Over the next few months, I met Ashley several more times. Each encounter revealed new warning signs about this woman who claimed to come from California wealth. When I visited Brian's apartment, Ashley would disappear into the bedroom with her purse, as if I might steal something. At restaurants, she insisted on separate checks. Whenever I mentioned my business achievements, she changed the subject. "Ashley's family owns real estate all over California," Brian told me proudly during one dinner. "What areas specifically?" I asked, having done business in California myself. Ashley interrupted. "All over, but discussing specific holdings is tacky. Mother taught me never to flaunt wealth." Yet her Instagram told a different story. Designer clothes, luxury cars, expensive vacations, all photographed and hashtagged meticulously. But strangely, never any family photos. "Your parents must be proud of your success," I said during another dinner. "They expect it," she replied coldly. "Excellence is the minimum in our family." 8 months into their relationship, Brian called with news that stopped my heart. "Dad, we're engaged. We're getting married in 3 weeks." 3 weeks? I nearly dropped the phone. "That's incredibly fast, Brian." "Ashley's family is paying for everything. They've already booked Lakeside Country Club for the weekend." "That's generous of them," I said carefully. Will I finally get to meet them before the wedding? They're very busy with their business interests, Brian said apologetically, but they'll all be flying in for the rehearsal dinner Friday night. You'll meet them then. I hung up, feeling a growing sense of dread. 8 months of dating, and I'd never met these supposedly wealthy, connected people. 8 months, and Ashley still looked at me like something stuck to her shoe. But what bothered me most was how Brian was changing. He used to call me every Sunday to talk about his job, his sobriety journey, life in general. After Ashley, those calls became rare. When we did speak, he seemed distant, defensive. "Son, is everything okay with you and Ashley?" I asked during one of our infrequent conversations. "Dad, could you maybe tone down the recovery talk around Ashley?" he replied, ignoring my question. I stood in my office at New Beginnings Recovery Center, watching clients walk to group therapy through the window, real people fighting real battles. Tone down the recovery talk? She just thinks it's kind of heavy. Her family's more private about personal issues. I hung up feeling diminished. Here I was running 8 recovery centers, employing hundreds, helping thousands get clean. But to this woman and her mysterious family, I was just a former addict who got lucky. Something wasn't adding up about Ashley Jenkins and her perfect California family. And as the wedding approached, I couldn't shake the feeling that my son was marrying not just a snob, but possibly something far worse. A liar. 3 weeks before the wedding, I was at Brian's apartment helping him move furniture for the new place he and Ashley had leased. Ashley was in the kitchen on the phone, while Brian and I positioned a bookcase in the living room. "No, Mother, you don't understand. His father has a past. Drug issues." Her voice carried clearly. I froze, my hands still on the bookcase. I know, but what can I do? Brian's already attached." Brian hadn't heard her. He was measuring the wall space, completely focused on his task. "Well, at least we don't have to socialize with him much after the wedding. I've made sure he's at table 15, in the back, near the service entrance." Table 15. Near the service entrance. Like I was the help, not family. When Brian went to get water, I stood in the hallway, my mind racing. I'd been in recovery long enough to know when someone was trying to make me feel ashamed. But I'd also been in business long enough to know when someone was hiding something. Because here's what didn't add up about Ashley's family. If they were so wealthy and established, why had I never seen a single photo of them? Why did all their social media accounts look so new? And why, when I casually searched their last name plus California real estate, did absolutely nothing come up? That night, I sat in my home office staring at my computer screen. Ashley's Instagram showed her in front of mansions, on yachts, at exclusive clubs, but always alone or with friends, never family. Her LinkedIn claimed she'd worked for Jenkins Family Holdings before moving to our state to expand family interests. Yet the company had no website, no business registration I could find. I called my longtime friend and business partner, Dr. Justin Pierce. Justin had helped me build our recovery empire, his medical expertise complementing my lived experience. "Justin, I need a favor. It's about Brian's fiancée. Ashley, right? Brian seems pretty serious about her. Too serious. They're getting married in 3 weeks." 3 weeks? Justin sounded shocked. "That's rushed. Something's off about her. She claims her family has this massive real estate empire in California, but I can't find any trace of it. You still have connections from your UCLA days, right?" Justin paused. "Ryan, are you asking me to investigate your future daughter-in-law?" "I'm asking you to verify if she's telling the truth. Call it paternal instinct, business acumen, or 14 years of spotting when someone's hiding something. Something isn't right. 2 days later, Brian called. His voice was cold. Ashley told me you were asking questions about her family at the caterer's office. What are you doing, Dad? I hadn't been to any caterer's office. Another lie from Ashley. Brian, I'm concerned about how quickly this is happening. Is it because she comes from money? Does that make you uncomfortable? The accusation stung. This has nothing to do with money. It's about respect. Ashley treats me like I'm something she needs to hide. That's ridiculous. You're just paranoid. Am I? She's put me at table 15, Brian, by the service entrance. Silence. Then, who told you that? I overheard her on the phone with her mother. She was probably talking about someone else. She specifically mentioned your father with drug issues. More silence. Then, defensively. Look, her family is very status conscious. It's just how they are. Have you ever even met them? Because in 8 months, I haven't seen a single photo. They're private people. Not everyone posts their entire life online. The conversation ended badly. Brian accused me of trying to ruin his happiness. I accused him of letting someone come between us. We both hung up angry. The next day, I drove to Brian's workplace and waited in the parking lot. When he emerged at lunch, his face hardened seeing my truck. 5 minutes, I said through the window. That's all I'm asking. He reluctantly climbed in. I'm sorry about yesterday, I began. I crossed a line questioning Ashley. Brian's shoulders relaxed slightly. But I need to ask you something important. Has Ashley ever asked you for money? Large sums? Maybe for family investments? His expression answered before he spoke. It's not what you think. Her family has cash flow issues sometimes. Real estate is complicated. How much, Brian? $60,000 for a property opportunity. It's a loan, not a gift. My stomach dropped. From your savings for your own home? It's guaranteed to triple in value. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Her father's handling everything. The father he'd never met. The father whose business didn't exist in any record I could find. I knew then I couldn't stop investigating. This wasn't just about Ashley disrespecting me anymore. This was about protecting my son from what looked increasingly like a con. The days before the wedding passed in a blur of activity and mounting tension. Brian and I barely spoke. I attended the tuxedo fitting, wrote my check for the rehearsal dinner, and continued my quiet investigation. 5 days before the wedding, Justin called. Brian, we need to meet in person, not over the phone. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our offices. I didn't want to believe it at first, Justin said, sliding a folder across the table. But the evidence is clear. Ashley Jenkins isn't from wealth. Her family doesn't own real estate. In fact, until 3 years ago, she was Andrea Johnson from a middle-class suburb in Nevada. I opened the folder to find credit reports, old social media accounts, and a driver's license photo, all showing Ashley under her real name. There's more, Justin continued. She's done this before. 2 broken engagements in the last 5 years, both with successful young professionals. Both men report lending her money for family business opportunities that never materialized. My hands shook as I turned the pages. What about her family? The ones coming to the wedding? Justin's expression was grim. I found payments from her account to a talent agency in Los Angeles. 6 actors. Contracted for a weekend appearance. They've been given detailed backstories, family photos, the whole package. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Ashley hadn't just been hiding her background or exaggerating her wealth. She'd hired actors to play her entire family at my son's wedding. What do I do with this, Justin? The rehearsal dinner is tomorrow. The wedding is Saturday. That depends on what you want to accomplish. If you confront her privately, she'll deny everything and turn Brian further against you. If you do it publicly, I'll look like the bitter father trying to ruin his son's wedding. Justin nodded. Unless you have irrefutable proof that even Brian can't deny. I stared at the folder, thinking about my son, the boy I'd failed during my addiction, the man I'd worked so hard to reconnect with, the son now being manipulated by a professional con artist. I need more than suspicions and circumstantial evidence, I said finally. I need something Brian can't ignore. Then we need the actual contracts, proof of payment, evidence the family arriving tomorrow are paid actors. I checked my watch. The rehearsal dinner was 24 hours away. The wedding, less than 48. Can you get it? Justin pulled out his phone. I have a contact at the bank where she opened her accounts. They've been watching her for possible fraud. If she's paying these actors, the transfers would raise flags. As I drove back to my office, I thought about what was at stake. If I was wrong, I'd destroy my relationship with Brian forever. If I was right but handled it poorly, Ashley would spin the narrative, making me the villain. But if I was right and could prove it conclusively, I'd save my son from marrying a woman who'd constructed an elaborate fraud, taken his savings, and planned to take much more. The rehearsal dinner was tomorrow at Lakeside Country Club. I'd finally meet the family that Ashley had been hiding for 8 months. And by then, I needed to decide, confront the fraud immediately, or wait until the perfect moment at the wedding itself. Either way, I knew my place at table 15 near the service entrance was about to become the most important seat in the house. The evening before the rehearsal dinner, I sat in my car outside Lakeside Country Club watching the staff prepare. White linens draped over round tables, flower arrangements being carried in, the grand staircase polished to a gleam. Ashley's supposed family had spared no expense, $30,000 for the weekend, according to Brian. My phone buzzed with a text from Justin. Meeting confirmed, 1 hour. I drove to a small cafe 20 minutes from the venue. Justin was already waiting in a corner booth, a manila envelope on the table and a grave expression on his face. You got everything? I asked, sliding into the booth. More than enough. Justin pushed the envelope toward me. Bank transfers from Ashley's account to Spotlight Talent Agency in Los Angeles. 6 actors contracted for the weekend. Character breakdowns for each family member. Even rehearsal notes about family history. I opened the envelope, my heart sinking as I examined each document. The contract specified roles for mother, father, 2 aunts, an uncle, and a cousin, each with detailed character descriptions. Mother, Katherine Jenkins, refined old money attitude, references to family vineyard in Napa, disapproves of new money and working-class backgrounds. Father, Richard Jenkins, finance background, references to golf club memberships and Harvard education, emphasized disdain for addiction issues. On and on, each role crafted to reinforce Ashley's fake background and, more pointedly, to subtly demean mine. There's more, Justin said, sliding another document across the table. Ashley Johnson, her real name, has been investigated twice for fraud. No convictions, but she's established a pattern. Find wealthy young man, create fictional background, secure marriage, drain accounts, disappear. I stared at the police reports from 2 different states. Both described the same methodology. Both featured victims eerily similar to Brian. successful young professionals from middle-class backgrounds who had worked hard for their achievements. "She's taken $60,000 from Brian already," I said, my voice hollow, "for a non-existent investment opportunity." "That's just the beginning," Justin replied. "Once they're married, she'll have access to everything: his accounts, his credit, his future earnings." I flipped through more documents, credit reports showing Ashley was $178,000 in debt, records of a previous name change, eviction notices from 3 different states. How did she fool everyone for so long? I wondered aloud. She targets specific men, successful enough to have resources worth taking, insecure enough about their backgrounds to be flattered by attention from someone supposedly above their class. Your son's 6 years of sobriety is an achievement he's proud of. And she's using it against him, I finished, the realization crashing down, making him feel like he needs to prove himself worthy of her fabricated family status. Justin nodded grimly. Classic manipulation. She isolates the target from anyone who might question her story, especially family members who can see through the act. My mind flashed to all the canceled dinners, the sudden changes in Brian's behavior, his defensive reactions when I questioned Ashley's background. I need to talk to Brian tonight. Show him all this before tomorrow's dinner. "Will he believe you?" Justin asked. "Or will he see this as his addict father trying to sabotage his happiness?" The question hit hard. Recovery had taught me that rebuilding trust takes years, but destroying it takes seconds. If I handled this wrong, I'd lose my son. "There's another option," Justin suggested. "Wait until tomorrow night. Meet the actors. Gather more evidence. Then confront everyone at once. And let my son go through with a rehearsal dinner surrounded by fake people?" Sometimes people need to see the truth themselves. No matter how much evidence you have now, Brian might not be ready to see it. I thought about my recovery journey. How many times counselors had presented me with evidence of my problem, and how many times I'd rejected it until I was ready to see it myself. "I need to make a call," I said, stepping outside the cafe. I dialed Matthew, my sponsor of 14 years. Matthew had been there through every step of my journey, from early sobriety to rebuilding my relationship with Brian, from starting my first recovery center to expanding to 8 locations. "Brian, what's going on? You sound troubled." I explained the situation, the investigation, the documents, the actors arriving for tomorrow's dinner. And now I don't know whether to confront Brian tonight or wait until I can expose everyone together. Matthew was silent for a moment. "What does your gut tell you?" "That if I show Brian these documents tonight, he'll accuse me of manufacturing them out of jealousy. That Ashley has poisoned him against me so effectively that nothing short of seeing the truth himself will convince him." "Then you have your answer," Matthew said gently. "Recovery taught us we can't force people to see truth they're not ready for. Sometimes the kindest thing is to let people discover the truth themselves, even when it hurts. But the kindest thing for whom? Brian will be humiliated either way." "Yes, but in one scenario, he has to take only your word. In the other, he sees incontrovertible evidence with his own eyes." I returned to the booth where Justin waited. "We wait until tomorrow," I decided. "I'll attend the rehearsal dinner, meet these actors, and document everything. But we need something more, something that even Brian can't deny." Justin pulled out his phone. "My contact at the bank says Ashley made 6 cash withdrawals yesterday, $2,500 each, payments for the actors, presumably. Can we prove those cash payments went to these specific people?" Justin thought for a moment. Not directly. But if we could get the actors to admit they're being paid, they won't admit anything. They've been hired to play roles. Everyone has their breaking point, Justin said, especially when they realize they might be participating in fraud. We spent the next 2 hours devising a strategy. Justin would contact a detective he knew who specialized in fraud cases. I would attend the rehearsal dinner as planned, document interactions with the fake family, and wait for the right moment. As I drove home that night, I thought about what awaited me the next day. I would sit across from 6 strangers pretending to be a family. I would watch my son beam with pride as he introduced me to people who didn't exist. I would smile and make conversation with actors who had been instructed to subtly demean me. But I would also be gathering evidence. Every conversation, every family anecdote, every contradiction would be noted. And most importantly, I would be searching for the weak link, the one actor who might break character when confronted with the truth. I called Brian before bed. "I just wanted to say I'm looking forward to tomorrow," I said, "to meeting Ashley's family." "Really?" Brian sounded surprised. "After everything you said about Ashley?" "I may have judged too quickly," I lied. "Everyone deserves a chance." "That's great, Dad. They're excited to meet you too." The relief in his voice broke my heart. He had no idea what was coming. "Table 15, right?" I said, unable to resist. "What?" "My table assignment. For the wedding. Table 15, by the service entrance." Brian's pause told me everything. "Dad, I don't know anything about the seating chart. Ashley and her mother handled that." Her mother. The actress, who would be arriving tomorrow, with lines rehearsed and a fabricated history ready to deploy. "Don't worry about it," I said lightly. "See you tomorrow, son." I hung up and stared at the ceiling, wondering if I was doing the right thing. Was I protecting my son, or selfishly proving a point? Was I saving him from a con artist, or just unable to let him make his own mistakes? The answer came when I checked my email one last time before sleep. Justin had forwarded me an email from his contact at the bank, a list of suspicious transactions from Ashley's account over the past month. Among them, a payment to a background check service the day after she first met me, and a consultation fee to a lawyer specializing in accessing retirement accounts through marriage. This wasn't about me anymore. This was about stopping someone who had systematically targeted my son, isolated him from family, taken his money, and planned to take much more. Tomorrow would be Act 1. The wedding itself would be the final curtain call. The rehearsal dinner began at 7 p.m. I arrived at 6:45, dressed in my best suit, the manila envelope tucked securely inside my jacket pocket. Lakeside Country Club gleamed with old money elegance, crystal chandeliers, mahogany paneling, lush carpets. A hostess guided me toward the private dining room. "The Jenkins wedding party," she confirmed. "Yes," I replied. "I'm the groom's father." Her smile faltered almost imperceptibly. "Of course. Right this way, sir." Inside, about 30 people mingled with champagne flutes. Brian stood near the windows with Ashley, who wore a white cocktail dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. But my eyes were drawn to the group beside them. A distinguished-looking silver-haired man, a poised blonde woman, and 4 other well-dressed individuals. The actors had arrived. Brian spotted me and waved me over. "Dad, come meet Ashley's family." Ashley's smile tightened as I approached. Up close, I could see the resemblance she'd cultivated with the actress playing her mother. Similar hairstyle, similar mannerisms, clever touch. "Mr. Foster," the silver-haired man extended his hand. "Richard Jenkins, delighted to finally meet you." His handshake was firm, his accent vaguely European. Affected, not natural. The blonde woman beside him nodded coolly. "Catherine Jenkins," she said without offering her hand. "Ashley has told us so much about you and your centers." "Recovery centers," I corrected pleasantly. 8 locations serving thousands of clients annually. "How admirable," Catherine murmured, "working with those people." Brian jumped in. "Dad's business was just valued at $22 million. He's one of the most respected voices in addiction recovery in the state." I appreciated Brian's defense, but noticed how Ashley subtly steered the conversation. "Daddy, tell Brian about the new vineyard property in Napa," she prompted. Richard launched into a detailed story about a multi-million-dollar vineyard acquisition. I listened carefully, noting inconsistencies, references to grape varieties that didn't grow well in Napa, shipping procedures that no actual vineyard owner would use. Throughout dinner, I engaged each family member, asking specific questions about their shared history. The actors were good, but not perfect. The aunt mentioned attending Ashley's high school graduation in June, while the uncle referenced the same event happening in May. Small slips that most wouldn't notice. Halfway through dinner, I excused myself to the restroom and texted Justin. All 6 present. Playing roles well but inconsistencies mounting. Bank records confirm? Justin's reply came seconds later. Detective Ward reviewing evidence. Cash withdrawals traced to actors' Venmo accounts. FBI interested due to interstate fraud pattern. Back at the table, I noticed Ashley watching me closely. Her eyes followed me with growing suspicion. "Ryan," Catherine called as I sat down. "Ashley mentioned you had some difficulties before building your business. How does someone with your background manage such success?" The table fell awkwardly silent. Brian stiffened beside me. I smiled. "The same way anyone succeeds, Catherine. Hard work, integrity, and recognizing the truth when I see it." "The truth," she repeated, something uncertain flickering in her eyes. "Yes, like knowing who people really are, not who they pretend to be." Ashley's hand tightened around her wine glass. "More champagne, anyone?" she interrupted. As servers refilled glasses, I noticed the youngest actor, the cousin, checking her phone repeatedly under the table, looking increasingly anxious. After dinner, as guests mingled during dessert, I approached her at the bar. "Everything okay?" I asked. "You seem concerned." She startled. "Fine, just checking on my dog." "Pet sitter issues?" "I understand. It must be hard being away from home for this job." Her eyes widened slightly. "Job? I'm here for my cousin's wedding." "Of course. Silly me." I smiled and pulled out my phone. "Hey, would you mind if we took a quick photo? Brian's always saying I don't document enough family moments." Sure," she agreed hesitantly. I positioned myself beside her and held up the phone. Instead of taking a photo, I opened a document and turned the screen toward her. Her contract with Spotlight Talent Agency, including her real name and payment details. "Jessica Martinez," I said quietly. Actress, contracted for 3 days to play young cousin with admiration for Ashley's sophisticated lifestyle. Rate, $2,500 cash. The blood drained from her face. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do. And I think you're smart enough to know when a job becomes something more serious, like participating in fraud." Her eyes darted around the room, locating exits. "I'm not interested in causing trouble for you," I continued. "You're just doing a job. But my son is about to marry someone who hired an entire fake family. Someone who's done this before in other states." Jessica swallowed hard. What do you want from me? Just answers. Did Ashley coach you all on how to treat me? Table 15 by the service entrance? Was that discussed? Jessica hesitated, then nodded slightly. We were given character sheets, backstories, instructions on family dynamics, and yes, specific notes about you. What kind of notes? To emphasize class differences. To mention how surprising it was that someone with your background could achieve success. To question the legitimacy of your business. And tomorrow? The wedding? What's supposed to happen then? Jessica glanced toward Ashley, who was watching us with growing alarm from across the room. I don't know all the details, she admitted, but she's planning something during the reception. A speech about family legacy and how some people will never truly belong no matter how much money they make. My jaw tightened. Did Ashley tell you she's taken $60,000 from my son already? That she's been investigated for fraud in 2 states? Jessica paled further. No. She said this was a family estrangement situation, that they needed actors because her real family refused to attend due to religious differences. And you believed that? It happens more than you'd think in this business. People hire actors for all sorts of family functions. Ashley was now making her way toward us, her expression fixed in a brittle smile. Jessica noticed too. I need this money, she whispered urgently. I'm paying for my mother's medical bills. I made a split-second decision. Keep playing your role tonight, but tomorrow, when I stand up at the reception, know that I'll protect you if you tell the truth. Ashley reached us, slipping her arm through mine with forced familiarity. Steeping my father-in-law from the boring crowd, Jess? How thoughtful. I smiled. Jessica was just telling me about your family vacations in Maui. Such wonderful memories you all share. Ashley's eyes narrowed slightly. We both knew her fictional family had never discussed Maui. Dad, Brian called from across the room. Come meet Ashley's college roommate. I excused myself, leaving Ashley and Jessica in what appeared to be an intense, whispered conversation. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of introductions, toasts, and careful observation. I documented every inconsistency while maintaining a pleasant facade. When the night finally ended, Brian pulled me aside near the coat check. See? Her family's great. You were worried for nothing. I looked at my son, his hopeful expression, his desire for approval, and couldn't bring myself to shatter his world. Not yet. They seem very cohesive, I said carefully. Tomorrow's going to be perfect, Dad. I can feel it. If only he knew how right he was, but not in the way he imagined. The wedding day dawned bright and clear. While Brian prepared with his groomsmen, I met Justin for breakfast at a diner near the venue. Detective Ward has everything he needs, Justin reported. The FBI is interested because of the interstate nature of the fraud and her pattern of behavior. They'll be ready to move once we have confirmation today. Confirmation? They need evidence of intent to defraud Brian of substantial assets. The rehearsal dinner alone isn't enough. It could be explained away as family estrangement, like she told the actors. So we need her to incriminate herself at the wedding? Exactly. And we need the actors to confirm they were paid to participate in fraud, not just a family substitution. I pushed my untouched eggs around the plate. Jessica might help us. She seemed genuinely shocked when I told her about Ashley's history. One confession won't be enough. We need irrefutable evidence that even Brian can't deny. By 2:30 p.m., I was seated in the third row of white chairs on Lakeside's immaculate lawn, watching my son stand nervously at the altar. The string quartet played softly as guests filled the remaining seats. Ashley's family occupied the front row opposite the groom's side, all looking appropriately emotional. The ceremony proceeded with picture-perfect precision. Vows exchanged, rings presented, kiss sealed with applause. Throughout it all, I maintained my composure, waiting for the reception where everything would change. The ballroom was decorated in cream and gold, with crystal centerpieces and flowing champagne. I found my place card, table 15, as promised, tucked away near the kitchen entrance. Perfect. After the bridal party entrance and first dance, dinner was served. I ate little, my attention focused on the head table where Ashley sat with Brian and her fake family. Jessica caught my eye briefly from her seat at table 3, her expression troubled. Finally, the moment arrived. Time for toasts. The best man spoke first, followed by the maid of honor. Then Ashley's father, Richard, rose, champagne in hand. When my daughter first told us about Brian, he began, his actor's voice perfectly modulated. I must admit, I had reservations. His background was so different from our family traditions. I tensed, knowing what was coming. But Brian proved himself worthy of the Jenkins name through hard work and determination. Some might say he overcame his disadvantages remarkably well. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Brian shifted uncomfortably. And while some influences in his life might be considered less than ideal, Richard continued with a pointed glance in my direction, we're confident that with Ashley's guidance, those influences will diminish appropriately. I felt the eyes of nearby guests flicker toward me, then away in embarrassment. When Richard finished his thinly veiled insults, disguised as a toast, Ashley herself stood, tapping her glass for attention. I'd like to say something as well, she announced, about family and belonging. Her eyes found me at my isolated table. In my family, we believe that class and breeding always reveal themselves. Some people, despite financial success, never truly belong in certain circles. I saw Brian's expression shift from confusion to discomfort. I'd like to thank everyone for coming today, Ashley continued. Especially those who traveled so far. She gestured toward her family. Then her gaze locked onto mine. And thank you to Brian's father, Ryan, for showing up. We weren't sure if he would clean up well enough for our venue's standards. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Brian shifted uncomfortably beside her. But I suppose we should expect that from someone who spent years in the gutter before getting lucky with his little rehab business. The room fell silent. Even guests who didn't know me looked shocked at the naked cruelty. This was the moment. Everything had aligned perfectly. Her public insult, her fake family watching approvingly, my son witnessing her true nature. I stood up from table 15, manila envelope in hand. Thank you, Ashley, I said, my voice carrying across the silent ballroom, for making this so much easier than I expected. All eyes turned to me as I stood confidently at table 15. Ashley, I continued, or should I call you Andrea Johnson? That is your real name, according to your Nevada driver's license. A collective gasp rippled through the ballroom. Ashley's face drained of color. What are you talking about? She hissed, her perfectly manicured hand gripping the microphone. I opened the manila envelope and removed the first document. I have here a Nevada driver's license for Andrea Johnson, with your photo. I also have credit reports showing $178,000 in debt across 3 states. Fascinating reading. Brian stood, confusion etched across his face. Dad, what are you doing? Protecting you, I replied, never taking my eyes off Ashley. Your bride isn't from wealth. Her family doesn't own California real estate. In fact, until 3 years ago, she was working as a cocktail waitress in Las Vegas. Ashley recovered quickly, forcing a laugh. This is ridiculous. My father… Tell him… I cut her off, pulling out more documents. Your father? You mean actor Robert Simmons, hired through Spotlight Talent Agency in Los Angeles? I held up the contract. Paid $2,500 cash yesterday to play Richard Jenkins, disapproving wealthy father. For the weekend? The silver-haired man's professional composure cracked. He glanced at Ashley, uncertainty in his eyes. I moved around my table, approaching the center of the room. In fact, every member of Ashley's family is a hired actor. I have all 6 contracts, complete with character descriptions instructing them how to treat me, the recovering addict father who wasn't good enough for table 1. Murmurs erupted throughout the ballroom. Brian stared at Ashley, then at her family, disbelief warring with dawning horror on his face. This is outrageous, Ashley's fake mother sputtered. We are the Jenkins family. You're Catherine Miller, actress, I interrupted, with credits in community theater and commercial work. Your LinkedIn profile clearly lists your profession. I turned to the guests. Ashley, or Andrea, has done this before. 2 other broken engagements in the past 5 years, both with successful young men. Both report lending her money for fictional family business opportunities that vanished along with her. Ashley lunged for the documents in my hand, but I stepped back. Brian has already given her $60,000 for a non-existent property investment. Brian's face crumpled. Ashley, tell me this isn't true. Her response was telling, not denial, but attack. He's jealous, she shouted, pointing at me. He's never accepted me because I come from money, and he doesn't. You don't come from money, I replied calmly. You come from debt, fraud investigations, and a pattern of targeting men like my son. I gestured toward Jessica, the cousin I'd spoken with last night. Would any member of the Jenkins family care to tell the truth now, before the authorities get involved? Jessica stood slowly, hands trembling. I'm sorry, she said, not to me but to Brian. I'm an actress. I was hired 3 days ago to play Ashley's cousin. We all were. She gestured to the other 5 actors, who shifted uncomfortably. That's not true, Ashley shouted, desperation creeping into her voice. Jessica, we rehearsed this. Rehearsed, Brian repeated, stepping away from her. You rehearsed what exactly? She means their family backstory, I explained. Each actor received a detailed character breakdown, family history, and specific instructions about how to treat certain guests, particularly me. I handed Brian the stack of documents. Bank records showing Ashley's cash withdrawals, actor contracts, credit reports, police reports from 2 states, and evidence of the $60,000 transfer from his account. She's a professional con artist, son. She targets men like you, successful, kind, perhaps a bit insecure about their background. She creates this fictional wealthy persona, isolates you from anyone who might question her story, then drains your accounts once you're married. The ballroom had fallen completely silent. Ashley looked around desperately, realizing her carefully constructed world was collapsing. Brian, baby, don't listen to him, she pleaded. This is all a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, came a new voice from the entrance. Detective Ward stepped into the ballroom, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. Ms. Johnson, we have some questions about patterns of fraudulent activity across state lines. Ashley's eyes darted toward the side exit. One of the officers moved to block it. Brian, I love you, she tried one last time, reaching for his hand. He pulled away, his expression hardening as he looked at the documents. "You took my savings. You lied about everything. You hired actors to pretend to be your family." His voice broke. "You put my father at table 15 by the service entrance because you thought he wasn't good enough. Your father is a drug addict," she snapped, finally revealing her true nature. "I was trying to protect our reputation." Brian straightened, a calm dignity settling over him. "My father is 14 years sober. He built a $22 million business helping others recover. He raised me alone after my mother died." His voice strengthened. "And unlike you, he's never had to fake who he is." Detective Ward approached Ashley. "Ms. Johnson, we need you to come with us." As the officers led Ashley away, her fake family awkwardly dispersed, some speaking quietly with other officers who had arrived. The wedding guests sat stunned. Brian's best man came to his side, placing a supportive hand on his shoulder. Brian looked around at the elegant disaster his wedding had become, then his eyes found mine. "Dad," was all he said, his voice catching. I crossed to him, and without hesitation, he fell into my arms like he used to as a child. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "You have nothing to be sorry for," I told him. "Nothing at all." The days following the wedding catastrophe passed in a blur of police interviews, bank investigations, and emotional recovery. Brian moved temporarily into my guest room, needing space from the apartment he'd shared with Ashley. We sat on my deck the third evening, watching the sunset, coffee mugs in hand. Brian had been quiet, processing everything. "How did you know?" he finally asked. "What first made you suspicious?" I considered the question. It wasn't one thing. It was a pattern. The way she treated me. Sure. But more importantly, how she never had photos with this supposedly close family. How defensive she got when asked specific questions about their business. How her story changed depending on who she was talking to. Brian nodded slowly. "I should have seen it. I'm a structural engineer. I literally look for flaws and weaknesses for a living." "We all have blind spots when it comes to love," I said. "And Ashley, Andrea, was very good at what she did. The FBI agent said she's targeted at least 4 other men before me. But none of them caught her before the wedding. You're the first one who didn't lose everything." Brian stared into his coffee. "I lost $60,000 and my self-respect. That feels like everything right now." "Money can be replaced," I said. "And self-respect grows back stronger when tested." A small smile touched his lips. "That sounds like a recovery saying." "It is, and it's true." We sat in companionable silence as the sky turned deep orange, then purple. "The worst part," Brian said eventually, "is that I chose her over you. I believed her lies about you. I let her put you at that table by the kitchen." "Table 15, I said with a half-smile. It turned out to be the perfect spot to launch my big reveal. Brian didn't smile back. "It's not funny, Dad. She wanted to humiliate you." "But she didn't. That's what matters." "Because you fought back. Because you investigated when I told you to mind your own business." I shrugged. 14 years of sobriety taught me something important. We're only as sick as our secrets. Ashley was keeping secrets that would hurt you. I couldn't let that happen. The aftermath of the wedding scandal brought unexpected consequences. News traveled quickly through the recovery community. Clients at my centers began sharing similar stories of loved ones who'd been targeted by con artists because of their vulnerability during early recovery. I developed a new program specifically addressing financial exploitation of recovering addicts and their families. Enrollment at our centers increased 30% in the following months. 6 weeks after the wedding that wasn't, Brian and I sat in my office reviewing plans for a new recovery center, our 9th location. "I've been thinking about your business model," Brian said, spreading architectural drawings across my desk. "With my engineering background and your recovery expertise, we could design facilities specifically optimized for therapeutic environments." I looked up, surprised. "You want to work with me?" "If you'll have me," he said. "I've spent 6 weeks thinking about what matters. It's not impressing people with fake status or pretending to be something I'm not. It's doing meaningful work with people I respect." My throat tightened. "I'd be honored to work with you, son. Besides," he added with a small smile, "someone needs to keep you from being relegated to table 15 at the company parties." We laughed together, the sound healing something that had been broken long before Ashley entered our lives. The Ashley Jenkins incident, as we came to call it, happened 3 years ago. Since then, our recovery empire has grown to 15 centers across 3 states. Brian heads our architectural and expansion division, bringing his engineering precision to our mission of helping others rebuild their lives. Ashley, or Andrea Johnson, her real name, pled guilty to multiple fraud charges. She's serving 5 years in federal prison, with restitution orders to her victims, including Brian. The FBI connected her to similar schemes in 4 states, where she'd targeted successful men with her fictional wealthy background. As for the actors she hired, none faced charges. Jessica, the cousin who spoke up at the wedding, now works for our marketing department, creating authentic videos about recovery journeys. The wedding videographer captured the entire confrontation, which turned out to be valuable evidence for the prosecution. That video also serves another purpose. I show clips of it during special sessions at our centers about financial exploitation and emotional manipulation of recovering addicts. I always end those sessions with the same message. Your past doesn't determine your worth. Anyone who makes you feel ashamed of your journey doesn't deserve a place at your table. That lesson extends far beyond addiction recovery. It applies to anyone who's ever been made to feel less than because of their background, mistakes, or struggles. If I could speak directly to everyone watching this video, I'd share 3 truths I've learned from this experience. First, trust your instincts when something feels wrong. Ashley presented a perfect facade, but the inconsistencies were always there for anyone paying close attention. When someone's story keeps shifting, or they isolate you from people who ask questions, pay attention to that warning sign. Second, your worth isn't determined by others' perceptions. I nearly let Ashley's judgment make me question 14 years of hard-earned success. Remember that those who try to diminish you are often hiding their own inadequacies. Third, standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. By confronting Ashley's deception, I wasn't just protecting myself. I was protecting my son, future victims, and ultimately the integrity of everything I'd built. Brian and I have grown closer through this experience. Last month, he started dating again, a doctor who works at one of our centers. She comes from a background similar to ours, middle-class family, worked her way through medical school, values authenticity over appearances. The first time he brought her to dinner, she admired a photo on my wall, me receiving an award for our recovery programs. "Your father is quite remarkable," she told Brian. "I know," he replied. "That's why he always gets the best table at family dinners." It's become our private joke. The best table, never table 15. A reminder of how close we came to losing each other and how standing in your truth, even when it's difficult, ultimately leads to freedom. Have you ever faced someone who tried to make you feel small because of your past or background? How did you handle it? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else find the courage to stand up for themselves. And if you found value in my story, consider subscribing to this channel. Each week, I share true accounts of justice, redemption, and the courage to face difficult truths. Remember, respect isn't something you request. It's something you command by living with dignity and integrity. Never let anyone make you ashamed of how far you've come or the path you took to get there. Because in the end, the only table worth sitting at is one surrounded by people who accept your whole story, not just the parts that make them comfortable.